I have a confession to make. When it comes to space movies, I've never really been a fan of them, and for the longest time, I can't explain why, which is weird because when it comes to comic books, I live for DC and Marvel's cosmic characters and cosmic concepts. While there's been many space movies that have been acclaimed, such as 2001, A Space Odyssey, Interstellar, and Gravity, to name a few, I have never seen any of them. Now wait, before you click the dislike button and close the video, let me say, although everything I've said so far is true, mainly not being a big fan of the space genre, there is one movie I absolutely love, and that is 2019's Ad Astra, directed by James Gray, and starring Brad Pitt. When it comes to Brad Pitt, you either love him or hate him. I can honestly say he's in my top 10 greatest actors list, and if I was to choose 3 of his roles that are my favourites, they would be Tyler Durden in Fight Club, Lieutenant Aldo Rain in Inglourious Basterds, and Benjamin Button in The Curious Case of Benjamin Button. Look, I know Tyler Durden might be a cliche pick, but I don't care because Fight Club is one of the greatest movies of all time. I understood its hype and acclaim and cult following ever since I first watched it back in college during my film studies A-level. And if you want to see a similar video like my bomb on year 1, like, subscribe and comment below. Going into Ad Astra, I was unfamiliar with the filmography of James Gray. My reasoning for watching the movie in theatres was, like I said, my love for Brad Pitt, and the fact that the title and poster piqued my curiosity, and so I asked my older brother to come with me, which he happily did, and after walking out, I was blown away by the movie, and it quickly became one of my best movies I watched that year, and probably my favourite space movie. What I found great about Ad Astra, that on the surface, it may come across a typical movie of the genre, such as both the audience following an astronaut's mission to Mars, or likewise watching the mission of several astronauts who are part of a crew, but beneath its surface, Ad Astra shows one man, one soul's journey beyond the stars, which leads him into a road of healing, self-love, self-discovery, and optimism when he confronts a figure from his past. Roy McBride, at the start of the movie, is shown to be a workaholic and consumed by his work of being an astronaut. It quickly transpires that he followed in the footsteps of his father, H. Clifford McBride, a celebrated astronaut who has been presumed dead for nearly 3 decades due to an incident involving what is called the Lyman Project. Since Roy is the main protagonist and it's his journey that we follow, the movie slowly establishes and shows how Roy is living in the shadow of his father. Everywhere he goes at work, he is reminded by his father, higher-ups talk about his father, and the mission that allegedly claimed his life and that of his crew. And Roy even works with an old associate of his father when he himself is sent on a mission involving the Lyman Project. Being of the space genre, the movie asks the real-life question, which all space commands are still asking: are we alone in the universe? And so, the movie reveals that the Lyman Project, which is still active and began with Roy's father, is Earth's search for intelligence in the galaxy. Although a simple project, which can easily be seen as a movie's MacGuffin, if one was to look deeper into Roy's character and backstory, it quickly becomes clear that the Lyman Project is metaphorical, which, with its metaphor in question being that of Roy's father and the unresolved abandonment issue that he caused him in his long decades of being absent in both his childhood and overall life, and the impact it had and still has on his mental health. Being a workaholic, Roy is shown to be emotionless and closed off to others, which isn't helped by the mentioned shadow of his father he continues living in. While some may question going into the same profession as his father, the reasoning is clear and simple, because perhaps choosing the same occupation as his father is Roy's way of dealing with his abandonment issue, and that being in the same work environment is his way to stay close to his father and keep his memory alive. Roy is relatable because he is portrayed as a lost and abandoned child, left behind by the parent or parents they loved. Through the entry logs he is shown to have before and after every mission, Roy expresses rage and anger at his father walking out on his life, stating how his father also expressed the same rage and anger, and confessing he doesn't want to be that guy or become his father because it's what's led him to struggle forming connections and relationship with people, and what's led him to currently be estranged from his wife. As mentioned, how the Lyman Project is metaphorical for Roy's father issues, his mission can likewise be seen as being metaphorical, with what he discovers during it and his subsequent exploration of the cosmos. Prioritizing the objectives of the Lyman Project, Roy, after losing an entire crew, much like his father did decades ago, shows no emotion, but this begins to change when he finds himself aboard Spacecom Underground's base. Gaining hope that his father is still out there, he's granted 2 attempts to make contact in hopes of a response. Reading from a script in the first message, it's in the second message where he goes off script and after so long opens up about his childhood before his father left him, talking about how they bonded, how he would be proud of the man he is today because he followed in his footsteps and became an astronaut himself, and lastly, his hope of a possible reconnection and reconciliation. Roy's reality is quickly shattered later on, however, by director Helen Lantos, who reveals the shocking truth about Clifford McBride, which is that he isn't the celebrated hero he has been painted as in the decades since his disappearance from the face of the earth and into the cosmos. That, unlike his son, who witnessed the tragic death of a crew, he murdered all his former crew members, which included her own parents, after they formed a mutiny against him, wanting to return to Earth, which he himself did not, having become fixated on the Lion Project's ultimate mission, and that lastly, Spacecom had covered this up and made him into a hero he came to be seen by everyone, Roy included. Some may ask, how do these revelations have to do with metaphors? Simple. The revelations in question makes it clear that sins of the father is the metaphor and one of the deeper themes of Ad Astra. Sensing and knowing that his father made contact with him after his second message, Roy is prevented from continuing on with the Lion Project's mission, with his superiors claiming he's too close to this due to his father. But if you were to look closer, it becomes apparent that his superior and Spacecom are desperate to prevent a similar incident and fate happen to Roy, and ultimately they don't want history to repeat itself. Looking at Roy in the beginning, his mental state and lack of empathy, it's clear to understand his superiors, because it's clear, whether intentional or unintentional, that he is slowly becoming his father and on the verge of losing his humanity. With the sins of the father, Roy comes to understand that, as well as living in his father's shadow, he now shares his burdens. One of the biggest ones is the burden to finish what he had started 3 decades ago. So he comes to the revelation that, despite his mental state falling apart at an alarming rate due to the built-up rage and anger he has kept inside and unable to express, that he must continue the journey further into the cosmos and finally confront his father and prepare himself for said confrontation and whatever happens during it and afterwards. I believe one of the reasons Ad Astra became my favourite movie back when I watched it in 2019 is because of how I came to relate to Roy McBride and how close to home he hit me. This is apparent in his long-awaited face-to-face confrontation with his father, Clifford McBride. What makes this moment and third up to the movie heartbreaking is how Roy's image of his father continues being shattered. At first, it's through director Helen Lantos' mouth and through Clifford's mouth in the recording that was covered up for decades about the murders he committed, but being face to face, Clifford outright admits that he never cared or even loved his family. He never once regretted abandoning his wife and young son, in the grand fashion of literally abandoning them and in the process Earth leaving it behind and not looking back.
This is home. This is a one-way voyage, my son. You talking about Earth? There was never anything for me there. I never cared about you or your mother or any of your small ideas. For 30 years, I've been breathing this air, eating this food, enduring these hardships. And I never once thought about home.
I know, Dad.
For me, and perhaps others who may have grown up with absent fathers, either them being in and out of their childhood and lives, or not being in them completely, the relatability of Roy meeting his father plays on the famous quote of, "Never meet your heroes," because it finally dawns on him that his father was never his or anyone else's hero, nor rather he was selfish, narcissistic in his nature, due to only caring about himself, and an outright murderer who took away the lives of innocent people due to becoming consumed and obsessed with finding life within the galaxy, lives he perhaps came to love over humanity and saw himself relating to. The writing of Clifford is unique because, being Roy's father, he also becomes a cautionary tale, showing what Roy himself could potentially become in the future, which hasn't been hard to see given how Roy has portrayed and presented himself up until this point. While not much is shown or known about Clifford's past, it can be assumed that he one day found himself like his son, had been at the start of the movie, that one day he started disconnecting and closing himself off from his colleagues, friends, and his wife, Roy's mother. Herself an interesting character in her own right. While she isn't seen, there are clear parallels to her and Roy's wife, both of them being women who became neglected after losing their respective husband. In Roy's mother's case, she outright lost him, while Roy's wife is on the verge of losing him. Learning the true nature of his father and the man he has now become after being in space for so long is the catalyst that enables Roy to finally gain the closure he has desperately wanted all his life. His very nature of being an abandoned child prevents him from not giving up on his father, because at the end of the day he still loves him and wants him back and holds on to him, begging for him to return to Earth and come home. But Clifford refuses, but in a way that for the first time in his life comes off as an unselfish act. He asks Roy to let him go, both physically by untethering him and figuratively to let him go from his life, and although reluctant at first, Roy gives in to his request and does so. The framing of the scene is powerful because as Roy watches his father drift off into space, this time it's different because he's able to witness his father walking out on him for a second time, and although just as painful as the first, he finally gained his closure, has gained an understanding, and finally he's able to let go of his father, escape his shadow, and let go of all his rage and anger, because he's made peace with his demons, and his return to Earth puts him on a better path. Roy McBride returns back to Earth a changed man. Having let go of his father, he's made peace with that part of his life and learned a great lesson in life, which is not to repeat the sins of his father. And in his last entry log, which closes the movie, it shows the first steps he's taken to keep moving forward and become a better person and man, stating how he'll start reconnecting with those closest to him, and stating that despite being unsure of what the future holds, he knows he won't be alone anymore, as he's gained not only peace but hope and optimism, which is shown when his wife joins him. The movie finally shows that he no longer is his father, and that compared to him, he's now a better man and husband than he ever was. To bring this video to a close, Astra is a special kind of movie because of how well it writes and presents deeper themes. On the surface, it may come off as a generic and typical space movie, but really, Astra is about absent fathers and the subsequent abandonment issues they cause to their children that they left behind. For me, it hit closer to home because, unlike Roy McBride, I was never able to confront my own father, but I found the beauty of not meeting him, because as I grew up and matured, I came to make peace with my own issues and scars that he left on me. One can say Roy is both lucky and unlucky that he met his father. Unlucky because of the revelation he learned, but lucky in the sense that his encounter with him, which he literally travelled across the galaxy for, was therapeutic for him because he was finally able to let go, put his demons to rest, and close that chapter of his life forever. For many, Astra can also be therapeutic because of how well it handles and tackles themes of fatherhood and mental health. And despite being a box office bomb, I consider it an underrated masterpiece because of how it went outside the box with its visuals, sound, and writing. And this video has shown why this is one of my favourite Brad Pitt performances. Thanks for watching, and please click the like button and subscribe to my channel for more videos analysing and talking about other movies and content I enjoy. Take care.